What's going on, guys? Philip, a trade genius. What an incredible week. I mean, you just saw the most incredible moves on, and I don't care if it's the stock market or if it's in crypto, but a global liquidity crisis upon us, and you're just seeing just enormous moves in market cap in different asset classes. So we're going to talk about Bitcoin and what happened. Obviously, just massive downside move, and we dipped into some levels we haven't seen in a long time, and levels that we haven't spent a lot of time in since 2017. So we're going to talk about that and go over what happened on this dump, what things are in play, and really what you can expect going forward based on the information that we have from this week. So I'm going to break up this segment into multiple parts just because there's so much to go over. We could probably spend an hour talking about this, but I'll do it in various parts. Basically call it crypto in turmoil, and we'll cover everything and get you guys a proper outlook going forward here. As we get ready to dive into this video, just a reminder, we have our specials running and we have different packages. If you want to get into the room with us, right now short-term stuff's working out really well. The higher the volatility, because of the way we play things like the binary options and the stock options and things like that, this environment's actually very good for us. So again, $2.99 special. Normally don't see that till Black Friday. Get in the room with us and we'll start hooking you up with those trades, and I think you'll enjoy it. All right, guys, let's dive into this video.
Trade genius.
Okay, guys, so 1 week candle, 52% down. Okay, not normal. What's happening is similar to what happened in 08. Crypto really wasn't around in 08. Bitcoin, I think was being thought of, but hadn't even been programmed. So we're talking about a similar situation, probably worse actually than what happened in 08 with the global liquidity crisis then, and big funds blowing up, big hedge funds. And now you're seeing the effects of how Bitcoin is affected by such things. So first thing critics are going to say is, well, Bitcoin isn't a safe store of value. That narrative is toast. But you also have to understand gold isn't being spared either. It's coming off. And back in 2008, gold got hammered too, but gold bottomed and gold ripped, like we talked about in other videos. So whenever we have a global liquidity crisis, all assets are going to get hammered. Why? Because when funds, and there are investment firms involved in Bitcoin, get that tap on the shoulder, and we're talking globally. This isn't just the U.S. This is a global liquidity problem, because you can see all the central banks coordinating on cutting rates. The Bank of Canada just cut rates. Bank of England just cut rates. And not only has our Federal Reserve cut rates, they're probably going to make an even bigger cut coming up here in the next week or so. So this is a global liquidity problem. And so nothing gets spared. And if I were to turn on the S&P 500 chart overlay, okay, so that's this line here. We can make it a little thicker so it's easier to see. And you'll notice that, it tanked, came down and tanked on Bitcoin. Now, Bitcoin, because of the plus token Ponzi, we saw this, and I think that's pretty confirmed now. You can attribute this huge spike up to that, and then the fall off from the collapse of it to this large drastic boom up and down, largely fueled by that Chinese boom bust there. Then it started to level out, like we showed you in the other charts, back into kind of like the cycle norms, and then we just start seeing the market just tank. And especially during the last 2 weeks, nothing but big pressure on the price of Bitcoin as it goes down. So all of this is liquidations. Now, going forward, what we can expect to see is probably a relief rally. Now, you have to understand the Feds just pumped 1.5 trillion into the system. Largely what's happening here is a bailout, and they're not calling it that right now, but they're just going ahead and they are issuing 1.5 trillion into the system. Okay. Where they're getting that money, well, that's for another discussion, but it's not like it's not hurting them. Let's just put it that way, okay? That's for another video, but that money has gone into the system. Now, when that happens, you are going to see a large relief rally. We saw it today in the stock market, and you also saw Bitcoin come off from the bottom here around 3,900 or so and rally up over to about 6K before it came back off a little bit. So we're kind of around the 200 weekly moving average, which coincidentally is where the stock market closed. They closed right above their 200 period weekly moving average. So this move in Bitcoin, all of this stuff is largely tied to this liquidity event going on, and it's affecting the whole globe. We're back in the same problem we had in 2008, and it's probably even worse this time. Back then, we kind of knew what was going on with the housing bubble and that collapse. This time, it's unclear what the actual trigger was. We'll probably hear about it after the fact in 5 years. But right now, all we can tell is something in the system broke, probably derivative based, and it's affecting now everything. That being said, how is this going to affect Bitcoin going forward? Well, again, we're going to have big relief rallies. Just because something rallies of 1,500 points isn't necessarily a good thing. That means that there's a lot of just shocking on harmonics going on in the system. So usually in big bear, nasty bear markets, you get extremely large up days, okay? And normally you don't see that in a healthy bull market, extremely large up days, just like what we saw today. These moves going up 1,000, down 1,000 in the Dow, not normal, not healthy, and a sign of a huge problem in the market. So we are going to see some big rallies, but ultimately I think what we're going to see is the stock market will probably test lower. Okay, this bottom that it just put in the last 24, 48 hours is probably a decent low that will hold. We may see a relief rally for a week. We may see a relief rally for 2 weeks. But bear in mind, I highly doubt that that down move is over. In 2008, the market went down, and there was a couple of rate cuts. There was a brief pause in the volatility down. It looked like it was trying to stabilize, and then it continued to roll over. So normally these things, when they're this severe, you're not going to get a V recovery from these levels unless they say they're starting QE4 and there's just a straight up outpouring of money into the system here. But normally that doesn't happen until the last of the tsunami waves wash in, and then they can have a more effective use of their funds going to work. First and foremost, they're trying to make sure that the credit lines between the banks and things like that are open. Otherwise, if that stuff starts to lock up, big companies can't float their commercial paper and can't make paper. It's just a cascading thing and ends up locking up the entire system, and then you will have a depression. So yes, they're bailing them out of that necessity, but is it right? No. The system probably needs to get reworked so that this stops happening. But in the meantime, that's kind of the world we're living in. So going forward, Bitcoin dipping into this level. This is obviously a huge level of support. Here's a huge volume node. And so bouncing off of this level, not a big surprise. Last night in the room, I said anything north of 4K, you just buy. Buy. The level that we called out here was actually I was looking at this low volume node here. So 4350, that was a level looking to buy, and then taking off from there. So anything down in here, I know we're in this global liquidity crisis. I know there's extreme bearish pressure, but if you were to go back in time after this is settled, right, and this will pass, but if you go back in time, you're going to be looking at a situation where you caught a big dip, and as this thing settles out and starts to build back up, you're going to find that this price area here, especially if you can get things north of 4K, is just going to have a huge return, okay? Bitcoin isn't going anywhere. This is just one of the many assets that sell off. If we were to look at gold, okay, so here's gold, and I mean a sharp drop off too, right? So nothing's being spared. If gold was truly a safe haven, we wouldn't see really this. We'd see basically the opposite. Stock market down, you'd have an inverse correlation essentially, where you would start seeing this rocket away, not having this effect where it sells off. And something we were saying was that watch for gold to catch down to some of these moves, because that's what happens in these liquidity crises. Nothing gets spared. You might stave it off for a while and look like, oh, you're not getting the effects of the entire sell-off, but it all gets affected. So gold too down quite large today alone. So again, what's going to happen going forward is, I think largely this level here is going to be big support for Bitcoin, even if the markets and everything dip back down. Again, anything north of 4K, I don't think you're going to be underwater very, very long. So the 200 period weekly moving average is generally a very good spot for buying Bitcoin, and that's where we're at. That's where the bottom of the 2018 bear market ended. on the 200-week period moving average. And here we broke. I mean, if you got anything north or south of that, that is getting Bitcoin at a screaming deal. Okay, and you just have to accept the volatility that comes along with it. But that's, that is the story of Bitcoin. Anything under the 200 period weekly moving average is a good deal. So, again, that's my take on it going forward, even through all of this liquidity crisis stuff. That's going to be just basically, looking at any time that dips in there. You can ladder in bids in there, but that, for your long-term holdings, something with like a 24-month horizon minimum, these are the days that people wish they had bought it and then kick themselves when they don't. So I told the guys in the room last night, here it is. It's coming. This is the stuff everybody wishes. They wish they bought when it was 3,000 something, 4,000, and it comes at them hard, fast, and they chicken out. Don't chicken out. If you're a believer back when it was at 10K, then you should still be a believer in it down here at 4K because everything is dumping. The story in Bitcoin hasn't changed, right? You just have to understand what's going on in the environment that's affecting it. But, Bitcoin, the fundamentals, the ecosystem, nothing has changed. So buy when others are fearful, and that is exactly what that statement was born out of, was in these types of environments when you're getting down to just these extreme oversold levels. Don't be scared to pull the trigger at levels that you wish you had bought previously. Okay, so that's basically where we're at. Bitcoin just, feeling the effects of this entire global move. We're going to see pretty big rallies, relief rallies. We're also going to see this thing probably roll over again. So just bear that in mind. Will you get an opportunity to buy under the 200 period weekly moving average? Quite possibly. And if it does come back down, I'd be getting as much as I could. And again, I would probably look to buy at different levels. So instead of getting in at one level all at once, you can stagger your buys. But that's my take on it. I don't see any reason why this doesn't recover. And after the dust settles, Bitcoin starts to rip, especially after halving. Everyone's forgotten about halving, right? It's just a freak out session, but that hasn't changed. Output's getting cut in half. This thing's going to have a very bullish run into 2021. So don't shortchange yourself just because the panic is really high. Historically, these are great values. And I don't think that story has changed at all. So anyway, that's your overall look. That's where we're at. And that's the action we expect going forward. So I'm going to break this up into parts. Next one, we're going to look at the internals because I think that's some very interesting metrics that you need to be aware of. Also, kind of just help you frame where things are at and how extreme things are in sentiment. All right, guys, that's it for this video. Please hit like and subscribe. Love to see you in the room. Head over to tradelikeagenius.com or tradegenius.co and check out our specials over there. All right, guys, I'll see you on the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.
Trade Genius.